9/11 happened. Okay, so 9/11 happened according to God's purposes and his will. He brought it to pass for his glory.
He planned it.
Exactly. If Calvinism is true. Okay, so and again, let me read from the...
And so if Calvinism isn't true, then God created a universe where 9/11s happen for no reason, but he knows they're going to happen, but he can't stop them. And you say, let's worship that God. Right? Is that what you're saying, Andy Stanley and Leighton Flowers? God, maybe Andy Stanley, he's not a Southern Baptist. He doesn't have to believe this. Maybe he's an open theist. Maybe he doesn't believe God knew. Maybe it caught him by surprise. You want to worship a God that went, oh, what? Oh, didn't see that coming. Oh, man. Oh, all these Christians just died and all these non-Christians, now they're going to hell. And I was planning on trying to save something. That's what you want? That's your alternative? Really? Well, God just gives us his free will. And so, he knew it was going to happen, but it doesn't have any purpose. It's just, but that free will is so important. Worship him for having given us free will. That's basically what it turns out to be. The basis for worshiping God is that he's the origin of free will. Really? I remember that all through the Psalter. That's why we worship God. No, it's nowhere in the Bible, and you know it. You know it. Stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Westminster or the London Baptist Confession here, it says, God hath decreed in himself from all eternity by the most wise and holy counsel of his own will, freely and unchangeably, all things whatsoever to come to pass. Yet he hath not decreed, it goes on to say, anything because he foresaw it as future. In other words, he's not foreseeing it and permitting it. That's not what they mean by decree.
That's right.
They mean he has brought it to pass, as Piper says in his book that by Mark Tolbert. In other words, this is something God has planned. And so
if God has a sovereign decree. Yes, Leighton, that is exactly right. That's why that's the very foundation and ground of purpose, reason, value. There's value in what we're doing. There's value in fighting evil. But if God decreed for a purpose, therefore there's value. What if you fight evil and the evil happens anyways? Empty. See the problem? By the way, I just happened to look over, and I do want to pass this along. Kim Roberts says, I'm a female Calvinist. Please let Flowers and Stanley know that I never received my survey. So, and Summer didn't either. And in fact, I don't know of anyone at Apologia that got, did anybody get a survey? I didn't, it may have been sent out in one of those things that looks like junk mail. And I just throw junk mail out. So maybe that's what happened. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
Besmirch that thing. If you say that was a horrible, bad thing, then you've just called God's plan horrible and bad.
Baloney. Stop it, Leighton. Stop it. You can't find, and you know this, sir, you cannot find a single meaningful Reformed writer, not a single one of the Westminster framers, not a single one of the London Baptist Confession of Faith framers that would have every single one of them would look at you and laugh in your face, sir. And you know it. You know it. Don't tell me you don't know it. Because they operate on the biblical pattern of the recognition of the difference between God's decree and his prescriptive will. You know that. Stop with this stuff. This is you, Leighton, right here. This is you. This is all you do. It's all you've got. Stop it. Just stop it. That's all you're doing, man. Why? It's got little bee things on them there. They'd probably burn first, but anyway. Just stop it. You are not besmirching God's plan. You are doing what God calls his people to do, to be the means by which he ministers. Did you know something, Leighton? My book on grieving. It's one of the small ones. There it is. See this, Leighton? They were passing this out by the carton on September 13th at Ground Zero. I'm very happy about that. I think that's wonderful. But you see, we Christians, were a means of grace. He used our seeking to do what is right, to reach out in mercy and grace as representatives of God. But he decreed it. Yes, he did, which means it has purpose and value and meaning. I don't know how you can read Isaiah 10. I don't know how you can do it. I'd like to transport you back, Leighton Flowers, and have you stand there in the ruins of the cities destroyed by the Assyrians in Israel and make your man-centered arguments to them. And Isaiah will walk up and smack you in the face. That's what he'll do. He'll say, you don't get it, do you? You don't get it. God brought the Assyrians here. This is the fulfillment of Deuteronomy 28 and 29. This is God's justice taking place here. And yet, he knows the hearts of these Assyrians. And he's going to judge the hearts of these Assyrians. Because that's the basis he judges on. He doesn't base his judgment as if we somehow can thwart his decree. He judged the Assyrians on the intentions of their hearts, even though they were doing, he describes them as the axe being wielded. The arm, that's God's arm. They're the axe. Then he judges them. That's not fair. Oh, yes, it is. If you don't have a man-centered system. If you have a theistic system, a Trinitarian Christian theistic system, then it's perfectly just. I can understand from your perspective, yeah. But you don't have a consistent Christian system. That's why. That's why.
You've just besmirched what you think God did for his own self-glorification. And there must be a cognitive disconnect for Piper and Sproul and previously Sproul, obviously, he's gone on to be the Lord, and Moeller and others, to besmirch or to call out negative things that they see happening in the convention that they believe God unchangeably ordained for his own self-glorification. Yeah. It's like, do you see how logically this just does not play itself out? It does not work for you to be able to critique something that you believe God brought to pass for his own self-glorification.
Now, do you see the utter incoherence of the Leighton Flowers critique? Hopefully we've pointed this out. Go to the scriptures, transport this man back to Acts 4, Isaiah 10, Genesis 50, Genesis 20, almost any place, and sit him down and go, okay, try repeating that argument you just made. And it falls flat on its face. Flat on its face. It's all he's got. It's all he's got. Look at his website. It's all he's got. He just repeats it over and over again, puts different dress on it, spray paints the different colors. Same thing. Same thing. Okay, now, listen to what Andy Stanley says here.
Well, they toss it into the bucket of mystery, which...
Did I just toss it into the bucket of mystery? No, I didn't. I addressed it very directly, didn't I?
Yeah, to that point, I wrote, and again,
Now listen very carefully here.
This isn't a world I spend a lot of time in, so feel free to correct me publicly.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. You said feel free, so we're feeling free. And we're publicly correcting you.
This is your world. I just dance around the periphery. And some of the notes I took as I thought about our conversation, I wrote that essentially, and I read your book, and anyway, that if God causes or is behind or sovereignly institutes all evil, it really blurs. In fact, this takes me back to the parallel between the new Calvinist or hyper-Calvinism and atheism. This blurs the distinction between good and evil, because anything that glorifies or reflects well on God has to be good. So when evil reflects good on God, then evil becomes good. I just don't know how, again, I don't know how to live with that dichotomy. I don't know how to live in that world where good becomes evil and evil becomes good. And we're back to the question of, can you have a basis for morality apart from God?
You see why it might be important to maybe possibly pick up pick up a book by R.C. Sproul. He was just such a nice guy, and it's not like we've kept the answers to theodicy secret. But what's plainly evident is that Andy Stanley has not taken the time to do that. And again, he didn't have to do this thing. He said, publicly correct me. Okay, that's what we're doing. So if Ephesians 1:6 is true, 1:6 through 11, God works all things after the counsel of his will, and that it's all going to result in the praise of his glorious grace, then that makes all evil good and blurs the distinction between the two. Now, what is required for that mess of a critique to make any sense? Again, the fundamental distinction between the decree and our experience in time of the prescriptive will of God, our doing, which tells us what good and evil is, and hence cannot allow there to be a blurring of these things. And in fact, allows us to find good even in the midst of evil, in faithfulness to God, in seeing the pastors in China. Well, if we're put in prison, we'll start a prison ministry. We were thinking about doing it anyways. Okay? It's evil for the Chinese government to do what they're doing. And they need to be told that they will be judged for that evil. And they are telling them that. But you're so intent upon making God into your image that you cannot conceive of a God who could use the persecution of the Chinese government as a means to his own self-glorification. How many of us have been encouraged in our own lives by the faithfulness of the Chinese pastors as they're being persecuted right now? How many of us have been encouraged down through the years? The persecuted church has always been a special focus of mine. I've mentioned it many times on this program. The Christians who are persecuted under Islam today. Is it evil for Muslim governments to persecute Christians? Yes, it is. Will they be judged for that? Yes, they will. Has God used that to his own glorification? Yes, he has. He has used it in the sanctifying of his people. He has used that in ridding those who are persecuted and those who are observing this of love for the things of this world. Why is your God so stinking small? Why is your God just basically a big man? If you can't embrace the God that's as big as the God of the Bible, that means all good is evil and evil is good? Somehow blurred distinction? That's stunning to me. And it's absurd. It's just absurd. Yeah. As someone just said in a channel I just happened to look over, the safest place to be is the center of God's will. Betsy ten Boom while in Ravensbrück concentration camp. Exactly. You ever watched The Hiding Place? Yeah. Anyway.
And, Christians say you can't have a basis for morality apart from God. The Calvinists say, that's right, you can't have a basis for morality apart from God. But when you look at the basis of morality, good becomes evil and evil becomes good because God's behind it all.
Why? Because God is behind it all. You are assuming that because his decree determines the very fabric of time, that the decree is the same in intention and purpose for evil acts as well as good acts, right? That's what you're assuming. So you can't tell any difference biblically between the intentions and actions of Herod, Pontius Pilate, the Jews and the Romans, and the crucifixion of Jesus, and God's intention in bringing about the redemption of God's people through the cross. You can't tell a difference. You really can't. Seriously? I'm sorry. I shouldn't get upset about these things, but this is childish. This is first grade stuff, people. This is absurdity being promoted by a major pastor of a major church. I don't even know what to say. Do not even know what to say.